Very good, very good. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. I want to thank all of you again for being here and wanting to take this to the next level. I can tell if you're here, you have been applying what we've been talking about over this last year or so, and probably if you're here, my suspicion is that you're finding that it's pretty effective, and you want to make it more effective. And so I really appreciate you guys being here and working with it. I know it's not easy. It's not the quick fix that most people who are doing CEUs are looking for. But this is the beginning of the Mingjie School, and you guys are very, very important, all important keys in that beginning. And I think we have the opportunity here with doing this to truly create a disruptive event in Chinese medicine to bring the whole thing to a much higher level. And especially with some of the challenges that we're facing that I talked about earlier before, I think the time is right now to be doing that. So I want to thank you guys again for being here and being a part of it, okay? So, spicy warm or acrid warm. Are all of these herbs acrid? All the herbs in the category, are they actually acrid? No, but most of them are. Are all of the herbs warm? Yes, but they actually vary from neutral to very warm, okay? Do all of these herbs release the exterior? Yes, but they also do a lot of other things as well, okay? And can anybody define what it means to release the exterior? What does it really mean to release the exterior? What do you guys think it means? Somebody brought it up earlier. Sweating, that's definitely a part of it. Yeah, Lisa. Does it mean driving a pathogen out through the surface? Expelling, yeah. Opening the pores and expelling the pathogen. Yeah. So it means driving out a pathogen through the surface. Does it mean opening the pores and pushing out a pathogen through the skin itself? Releasing pores that are stuck, that's a part of it also. Can we say that these herbs help the skin breathe? Yeah, we can in some ways, okay. And does the exterior, here's an important question, does the exterior just mean the skin? And Dr. Sonia does open and release Taiyang at the exterior level. I think that's very important to look at, but not all of these herbs go to Taiyang. In fact, some of them don't really have anything to do with Taiyang at all, except indirectly through our balance structure understanding, which is an important thing to know too. But does the exterior just mean the skin? It's very, very important to understanding this category. I don't think it just means the skin. Okay, remember the exterior, the nose, yeah, the nose is an important thing as well in the exterior, okay? And the nose is actually a good example because it's a little bit about what I'm talking about, that the exterior means all the different surfaces of the body, okay? And we're a tube, right? That tie-in is a tube, okay? And so that nose, and yeah, and the lungs are what? They're a gateway to the exterior as well, right? And the nose is a very interesting example of that because it's actually outside of the body in a certain way. You know, it's right out here in those inner linings. So if you think of the linings, when we talk about biao and li, right? Li means the lining of something. So there's a lot to that in how we wind up applying these herbs as Mingjie practitioners. It's not just for simple things like releasing wind cold. We can use them for a lot of things. So just think about those linings and those the surfaces, okay, and that we're a tube, Okay. Is every herb in this category an herb? Yes. Okay, so at least we can cling to that, because a lot of herbs in different categories actually aren't herbs. Maybe they're animal or mineral as well. So what else can we say about the herbs in this category? And what does this category have to teach us? All right. Are there any other tastes in these herbs besides acrid? Yeah. Okay. One thing we notice about them, almost half of them, is that these herbs are described as being aromatic. Okay. So aromatic isn't really a flavor, but it almost could be. So what does aromatic really mean? It's important for us to define this a little bit. So here I found the definition of aromatic. I'll put that up for us. Here we go. Sorry, this is taking a little bit longer as I get fluid with using Zoom here again. There we go. Okay, and I will let you see it. Okay, aromatic. Okay, means having a pleasant and distinctive smell, like a massage with aromatic oils. Okay, in chemistry, this is, aromatic I would not define in that way as having a pleasant and distinctive smell. Maybe distinctive part, it's not always pleasant. A lot of time that the aromatic quality is kind of a biting or a penetrating, right? That's the idea that we're really after, is that penetration, right? So in chemistry, it's a compound containing a planar unsaturated ring of atoms that is stabilized by an interaction of the bonds forming the ring. Okay, why did I include this? I like this idea because this whole thing of this unsaturated ring of atoms that is stabilized by an interaction of the bonds forming the ring. Okay, that's a very interesting parallel to what we're doing with our formulas all the time. Okay, we're looking for stabilities and instabilities, and the instabilities are what help us to create different combinations with our herbs. And so I like that way of thinking. So such compounds are typified by benzene and its derivatives. So it's a certain way that happens. And compare that with alicyclic. Okay, what does alicyclic mean? Okay, that means relating to or denoting organic compounds which combine cyclic structure with aliphatic properties. Okay, with like cyclohexane and other kinds of things. So that's not so interesting, but the aromatics are much more interesting than with that business of the unsaturated ring of atoms that's stabilized by an action of the bonds that are forming the ring. That sounds a lot like how we use Ming-Jie relationships to understand the inner structure of herbs and the external structures of how they can fit together, right? It's really very much what we're doing, is we're learning how to lock these different forms together like blocks, like jigsaw puzzles. All right, so aromatic as a noun means a substance or a plant emitting a pleasant and distinctive smell. All right, or like an aromatic compound. Okay. So where's the word come from? Aromatikos. It actually comes from Greek, which is aromatikos, from aroma. So what does aroma mean? Means a distinctive, typically pleasant smell, like the tantalizing aroma of fresh coffee. Okay, right? A subtle, pervasive quality of or atmosphere of a particular type. Right? It says the aroma of officialdom. I like that. Okay, so this also comes from the Greek word originally aroma, which means spice. Okay, so we have a kind of cyclic definition here. Okay, aroma actually means spice. So speaking of cyclic, aromatic just means what herbs smell like on their own or when you cook them, right? The aromatic that's what we're looking for, is what does it smell like? Either when you cook them That volatility can easily disappear, so we want to be careful. Huh? What do they smell like? That aroma. So, what herbs in the acrid warm exterior releasing category aren't described as aromatic? Okay, and why aren't they if they're all herbs? Okay, how can an herb be an herb but not smell like an herb? Okay, maybe if it's not aromatic. Okay, all herbs. This is important to know. All herbs are more or less aromatic. Okay, but I like aromatic herbs because they have a kind of a quickening quality. Okay, an aroma shoots through the system and it crosses membranes. That's very important. Okay, aroma breaks through boundaries. Okay, aromatics influence physiological functions very profoundly. They're almost like hormones. Okay? Almost like hormones. In fact, many smells and hormones are actually related in interesting ways. So look what happens when we smell. Someone brought up the nose earlier, right? What are all those interactions? That's where do those interactions happen? They happen in the sinuses, right? So the sinuses are yang ming, right? Xiaoyang, and taiyang, right? So in this area, this all involves the aromatics, okay? So all of those either converge in the brain or they start in the brain and move down through the body. So that's a lot like the pathway of the hormones, isn't it? So there are real connections between these aromatics and the hormones, or those hormone pathways that we want to pay attention to. Okay. So the herbs that aren't considered to be aromatic in this category, there are a few of them. I'll start putting them up for you here. One of them is Congbai. So for some reason, Congbai is not considered to be aromatic. But there's scallions, okay? And are scallions aromatic? Of course they are. Of course they are, even though they aren't called aromatic in the pharmacopoeias for some reason, okay? Another one is, this one is Husui, which is the coriander and cilantro. Is coriander aromatic, cilantro aromatic? Of course it is, right? And this one, another one that isn't considered aromatic. This is crazy. Take a look at this one. Shenjiang. That's one of the most aromatic things in the whole pharmacopoeia that we use, right? Shenjiang. It's also not considered aromatic if you just look at the pharmacopoeias, all right? Of course it's aromatic, okay? What about, here's another one. You guys might not have as much experience with this one as with Shenjiang, but Shi He Liu. This is one that we actually don't use in Chinese medicine too typically, but it has its time, all right? The tamarisk stems and leaves. Is tamarisk aromatic? It's very aromatic, but it's not called aromatic. Here's another one. This is shocking that they don't call this aromatic. Well, why not? Because we all know that guizhi is super aromatic, and the more aromatic it is, the better, right? That's sort of how we define the quality of guizhi. It's by how aromatic it is. So has anybody, I wonder if any of you have ever been to Oaxaca in Mexico and been there when they grind the cacao and add the canela. The canela is the guizhi, right? Or the cinnamon, right? So you never forget that aromatic quality, that fresh cacao getting ground, and so all those aromatics are getting released, and they put the cinnamon in there with it, and they grind it all together, and it's just the perfect temperature because it's whirling around and it's warm from the mechanical machine that's doing it, and it releases incredible aromatics that go for blocks and blocks and blocks. You can smell it, and all you want to do is buy a big sack of that beautiful fresh ground chocolate. So beautiful. Now, there's another one, not for some reason not considered to be aromatic or not described as aromatic, but why not? Okay, our classic is, oh, let me change this around so we don't have to do these footnotes. Let's make these endnotes. Ma Huang, not considered aromatic? Sounds a little crazy to me, right? It certainly has an aromatic effect, but is it really aromatic? It's a little bit aromatic if you've ever played with the Ma Huang, right? But I would say it's actually more internally aromatic in terms of its aromatic effects, rather than being externally aromatic as a factor of smell. Okay, so it's important to kind of adjust our ideas of what aromatic really means. Okay, so it's like on a physical level, but then aromatic is also kind of an action as well. Another one that is considered to be not aromatic, but is, if you just look at it, is this one. Oops, there should be a J here. The Jixiang Tang, right? Right, that's another one, not described as being aromatic, but there's something of the quality of this category. This is one reason, sorry, I keep doing that automatically. There's something about the quality of being an acrid warm exterior releasing herb that already has a certain aromatic quality to it. So whether or not, this is why I'm doing this, and a few more that I will do, that even though it might not be described technically as being aromatic, any of these ones like Busher Sao, this has a real pungency to it when you play with it and open it up. So all these herbs, even though they're not described necessarily as being aromatic, they actually are. So I would say that being aromatic is important. And then the last one here is the Tsang Erzi, which isn't particularly aromatic if you just smell it, but it does have quite an aromatic effect. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Both a combination of the actual smell itself and also what the action is. I am of the belief that these aromatics are very, very important to our health. And this is one reason why spices became such a big deal at some point in the history of humanity, because we discovered that the volatility of these spices was so beneficial to us, so beneficial to our health. If you think back to our really primal ancestry, what were we doing? We were going through forests and we were constantly foraging in the forest, and we were trying and tasting different things. Well, aromatics were such an important part of that, okay? So the aromatics are related with our hormone system, they're related with how our body functions. So unfortunately, most of us living highly industrialized lives now, we have fairly bland diets, not necessarily that much aromatic quality in the food that we eat. But we have to do something to get that back, because I think that those aromatics, we use them internally also. It's not just an external thing. We use them internally as ways to, like I said, cross membranes and to penetrate and stuff like that. So these are very, very important. Again, even though these herbs are not described technically as being aromatic in the descriptions of them, they still are. A lot of them still are. So so that is very important to remember with these exterior releasing herbs. Okay. So going back to Tsang Erzi, is it really aromatic? If you just smell it, it's not really, but it's aromatic in terms of its effects, say, on the brain and on the sinuses, right? For sure. Okay. So being aromatic is an important part of those exterior releasing herbs. Okay, I think so. Whether the pharmacopoeias describe that or not, um, it's kind of baked into the definition of exterior releasing. Okay, so keep that in mind, even with the foods that we eat. If something's more and more aromatic, it's going to start opening things up. Okay, simply put. Okay, so what else could we say about the herbs in this category? All right, what does warmth really have to do with it? Not too much, because there's also an acrid cool releasing category as well, right? Okay, so what does acrid and warm mean? So a lot of times, like we've learned with our 3 T's, that we can have these very simple definitions, but then when we start combining those different qualities, we can come up with very complex pictures. We're going to be exploring that a lot over these next few weeks. Okay. So what does acrid warm mean? It means stimulating, dispersing, and warming. Okay, so it's stimulating, dispersing, and warming. Okay, so all these herbs are at least somewhat stimulating, dispersing, and warming. So keep that in mind. So when do we want to stimulate, disperse, and warm our patients? Well, that's pretty much what we came up with in our little meditation there, right? Maybe we didn't quite hit on the stimulation part, but the dispersing and the warming for sure. But that stimulation is really important. Stimulation, the activation. Well, I'll describe it a lot in terms of activation, right? So something is stagnant, stuck. It's like this entity with little claws, this cold little entity, grabbing on. You got to activate something to get that thing off of you, right? Like that. That's that kind of an idea. The creepy little clinging thing, right? You got to shake it off like that. Okay. So stimulating, dispersing, and warming. We want to think about that. Okay. So when do we want to stimulate, disperse, and warm our patients? Okay, when reduced function leads to cold congestion. That's one time. Okay. That could mean exterior wind cold. That's kind of the definition of getting hit by exterior wind cold, right? Reduced function leads to cold congestion. So in the old days, they thought if your Wei Qi was strong enough, which is a transformation of the yang of the body, it'll protect you from anything. That's kind of what underlies all of our notions of Chinese medicine. So it could mean exterior wind cold, and that's exactly when we're supposed to use these herbs. But there are other times we could use them as well, right? We can use them whenever reduced function leads to cold congestion in a way that the interior can no longer communicate with the exterior. Okay, and those functions become confused, right? So remember, we have this internal yang that's transforming into Wei Qi and coming out and sort of radiating out, okay? So whenever any aspect of that function begins to get confused, that's when we use these herbs, all right? Okay, we'll go a little bit deeper, okay? Are all of these acrid, warm, exterior releasing herbs acrid? No, they aren't, okay? So who isn't acrid and how do they wind up in this category? Okay, let's go back to this herb, which I'm curious if any of you have actually used this herb, which is Jixiangtang, like that. And let's see if I'm still screen sharing. I don't think I am. There. Let me see if I can pull up the chat at the same time. I can see the chat at the same time. Okay. There we go. Okay, so Lisa says she's never used this herb. I don't use it too often, but sometimes I do. Why? Because I really like this clock-neighbor relationship of Jixiangtang, and sometimes it's important to use that. Okay, so it's sweet, but it's not acrid. So what's it doing here in this category? It also isn't really that warm. Some people think it's neutral, actually. Okay, maybe some varieties are warmer or more neutral than others. That's one thing that's a little bit confusing when we look in the pharmacopoeias. Is sometimes they'll say something like this, like neutral to slightly warm to warm. Okay, um, does that mean that the herb is always neutral to slightly warm to warm, or does that mean that depending on where the herb is grown, or maybe when it's picked? That kind of thing. There's an ambiguity in the pharmacopoeia around that. And what it boils down to, so to speak, is that we have to experiment with, whenever we get a new batch of herbs, we need to taste it a little bit and see, okay, wow, how aromatic is this, or what does the temperature feel like on this? And we've got to really know what that stuff is, because there's natural variation in everything that we use and everything that we do. And that natural variation is part of what keeps our medicine so powerful. There's a real downside to standardization. And that downside is that if things are always coming in the same way at the body adapts to it very easily. So this is one of the brilliant things about the way we practice Chinese medicine with the Mingjie school, is that we're always varying the formulas to match what's going on with the patient. And so because of that, the patient won't adapt to the formula. And that's really, really important. This herb does go through both the lung and the liver. Okay, so it covers both internal and external wind, doesn't it? Okay, so that's one reason why it's really useful. Okay, but there are actually tons of lung liver herbs that aren't in this category. There are actually 90 of them. Okay, so there are 89 lung liver herbs that aren't in this category. Okay, I think that's a lot. Okay, and I think that sticks out for some reason. So again, as Mingjie practitioners, we're doing these different comparisons, and then we're looking for what sticks out. Okay, so what is it? All right. So from what I found, it looks like Jixiang Teng is the only herb in the pharmacopoeia actually that has this particular configuration of being a pure lung liver herb. That's our neighbor relationship, remember. We should call it liver lung. It's a neighbor relationship, all right? It's the only herb that I found that has this particular combination, lung, liver, sweet and warm, all at the same time. Interesting. So something about this combination earned it a place in this category. Sweet, warm, and then that internal and external wind. Okay, so when might we use this herb? Well, we know because of its sweetness, it's going to be mildly supportive. It's going to generate some fluid, a little bit maybe. It's a little bit consolidating, actually, if it's sweet, which we don't normally think of with an exterior releasing herb. We don't want to consolidate too much because that's kind of against what we want to do. But on the other hand, we don't want to disperse too much either, because then that'll just deplete the patient more. Okay. So because of that sweetness, that mild support, a little bit of fluids, okay, maybe we could use that for a mild wind cold in a deficient person with some dryness, okay, or for a cold, dry allergy. Okay. So remember, the lung and the liver channels converge where? In the nasopharynx area, okay? So think a dry, compromised nasopharynx. That's when you would use this herb, okay? And also let's remember the stomach, because the lung channel begins in the stomach, doesn't it? Okay, and the liver channel curves around the stomach. So we could use it for a cold, dry, low function there. Like that. What about, could you use it for insufficient seminal fluid? Why not? Right? Because we talk about these fluids and then also the lung and the liver there. Care for a woman with mild cold dryness affecting the lining of her uterus. We see that kind of a lot. So again, we want to think of the surface. Okay, what about for somebody that has a tremor or maybe an eccentric behavior? That looks like So you think of the lung and the liver channels, right? So maybe some kind of eccentric channel behavior that's like this, with them contracting the lung and the liver channels at the same time. Maybe it's not as exaggerated as this, right? It could just mean a kind of a certain kind of an uptight quality to the person. You get the idea. So with all of these different patterns, I want us to become very fluid. You know, Ming-J could even become, I might have mentioned this before, it could be like a school of acting also, if we really learned how to embody all these different patterns that happen. I think it's a good idea for us to do that and really exaggerate it and make them into characters. And then you can see when that character passes through a person's body or through a person's life, that character has very distinctive qualities. So we want to look for those. So you get the idea. All right. So I want to follow this sweet thing for a little bit, this acrid sweet combination, okay? So what other herbs in this category have some sweetness? Here's one, another one, which is Sugong, right? So this is the stem of the Suye, the Perilia. Very, very useful herb. Do we use it to release the exterior? Not too much. We actually use it for something else, usually is to regulate and rectify the qi. But nevertheless, it's in this category, probably because of its origin with the Zisuye, right? So this is kind of a meaningful comparison with our last herb, okay? Because the lung and the spleen channels traverse similar pathways in a lot of ways. But remember, the spleen only goes up to the lower surface of the tongue, okay, as opposed to the liver, all right? So maybe that cold and wind could be affecting the tongue here with this spleen, spleen tropism. Or maybe you could use it for cold and dry salivary issues. Something like that, okay? So the addition of that stomach channel is going to add a really strong descending and digestive quality to the Sugong, okay? Especially with that stomach and spleen biao-li going on there. And there's also a lot of lung consolidation, okay, with that lung and spleen tie-in name relationship that's happening there between the lung and the spleen. And the acrid quality is going to bring more dispersion and stimulation to the picture also, isn't it? So it's not just sweet, but we have that acridity as well, and the stated aromatic quality from the Sugong. It's nicely aromatic, actually. Okay, so that acridity brings that dispersion and stimulation, the activation of the picture, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm thinking when I look at this herb and when we really look at all these different qualities that we're talking about, okay, I'm thinking something like wind cold invasion, probably with sweating on this one, because of the warmth and this activation we're talking about. Kind of similar to Guager, okay, but maybe with a lot of sweating. Okay, so we need to protect the fluids and disperse at the same time. So even though this herb looks simple, it's actually painting a pretty complex picture of when you would use it. So we want to get used to this idea of creating a picture and sort of an idealized picture of when we would want to use an herb such as this, okay? What else is sweet in this category? Some of them we were talking about a bit earlier, which is this one, the Shi He Liu. Super interesting channel combinations here. Let's chat over. Shi He Liu, the tamarisk. Acrid, sweet, and look at there. We got salty, and look, we got lung, stomach, and here's the heart. We got the heart in the picture now. Super interesting, okay? Remember, But we talked about stomach heart before in our other classes. Where those channels converge, they converge in the throat. Okay. So this herb maybe is going to be used with some even some dry or dryish nodules in the throat because of that saltiness, right? That salty addresses the any kind of anything that needs to get dissolved. Make sense? We do like that, okay? Maybe there's some wind, cold, dryness with retention of fluids that's going on. And we're going to want to use this herb, okay? Maybe there's itching with that that heart and blood connection, right? Itching. So then there's the heart and the lung, right? Maybe the stomach as well, if it's going a little bit into Yang Ming territory. The body's going to want to try to accommodate for that. Okay. So we want to think. We want to look at these channels. We want to look at all the 3 T's. Well, what must this herb be used for? What's the kind of situation we want to come up with our own kind of paradigm for each one of our herbs? Okay. So again, I said maybe there's some retention of fluids there, and use the saltiness to move that. Okay, maybe there's itching. Okay, with that heart and the blood connection. Okay, how about like a cold, dry spasticity in the face, with the heart opening into the face and the stomach channel traversing so much of the face? Okay, that's another idea that could happen. Okay. What about for somebody who's like cold and gloomy and never smiles? We can't activate that stomach quality of smiling. How many, we know people who are like this, huh? Maybe we could give them some of this herb. So I want you to really think about all these different ways we can use the herb. Like think that you're sculpting the people around you into happier beings, okay? Something like that, okay? Maybe somebody who has difficulty expressing themselves, and particularly their emotions, right? Okay, that expression again, we're talking about the heart comes up into the tongue also, right? That saltiness in there is really, really interesting. That adds a whole other spin to what we would normally think of as a acrid warm exterior releasing herb, doesn't it? Okay, so now let's really get down with the very important and very common Guager. So again, learning how to differentiate. When do we use these herbs? When do we use one? When do we use another? Guager is super, super interesting. Look at where it goes, the heart, the lung, and the UB. Okay, so this is actually the first one that we're talking about that's going into the UB channel, right? Which is, it's supposed to all be about Taiyang, right? Is it really all about Taiyang if it doesn't go through the Taiyang channel? Okay, so here we're talking about Taiyang. Heart, lung, and the UB. Okay, this is the first comparison I would have thought of with the sweet and the warmness. Okay, but the territories are really different here, right? Between some of the other stuff that we've been looking at, it's very different between this and like a lung and liver territory, isn't it? Okay, this is really going to be like upper back and, you know, shoulders and like that, and neck. So it's the same idea, but this is more activating. Okay, it's related to very different territory. Okay, so maybe this is kind of a cold, low function along with that T5, T3 line area as well. Okay, when we get that UB involved. So let's look at Fang Feng. Okay, Fang Feng, here we go. Again, how do we compare when we use these herbs? And there's our Fang Feng. Okay. Super interesting. To me, I'm always flabbergasted when I look at the territory of Fang Feng, because we always think about using it for the lung, don't we? But it doesn't go through the lung. UB, liver, spleen. Some people say Du or the Yang Chao. Fang feng. Okay, it's really less about wind. It's more about the lower lung area. When you look at that liver and spleen in that area. Okay. It's also musculotendon issues along the spine, isn't it? Right, the liver and the spleen. That says absolutely musculotendon kind of situation. Right, there's a lot of brain going on here as well. Okay, between the UB and the liver channels, there's a lot of brain going on in there. I'm also thinking eyes as well. Okay, between the liver and the UB and the yang chow channels. Have to look at the eyes for fang feng for sure. Okay, what about for eye twitches? Definitely. Eye twitches. So you have a combination maybe of external, internal winds going right through those channels there. Okay. Maybe, well, can we say on the left side or the right side would we be treating eye twitches? Because usually people don't have bilateral eye twitches, is one side or the other, right? Can we say? Not really, not really with when we're using the herbs, okay? But could we treat it with the acupuncture and use our acupuncture to become a guiding force with our formulas? Absolutely yes. So who says that the guiding herbs in our formulas need to just be in the formulas? We're doing acupuncture too. At least most of us, I think we're doing acupuncture too, right? So we can get some of the laterality or some of the specifics. We can get that ball rolling with the acupuncture sometimes, and then the herbs can come in and really continue that work that we start with the acupuncture. That's a very important idea. Okay. Yeah. So that's it for sweet comparisons inside this category. Okay. Now, we'll take a little bit of a break here and we'll do some other comparisons outside of acrid warm exterior releasing herbs, because we're not so sure if we buy into these categories anyway. So we're gonna start doing some really interesting cross comparisons. Okay, and we'll continue doing that. Any questions for right now? Matt says that all of those fang feng, let's take a look. All this fang feng, yeah, very good observation and important observation. These are all relationships with the lung, according to our balance chart, right? So this is the kind of thing that we want to look for, remember? And so we discussed in our last classes that that we would call that that kind of a relationship where we're treating a channel, but maybe that channel doesn't actually exist as a tropism in any of the herbs that we're using. We're calling that maybe remotely, or I want to avoid the word ghosting because that has like all kinds of other connotations, but maybe we're distilling it in, yeah, we call it a distal herb, right? We're using that distal quality by using other, especially if it's 3 or more. Okay, it's very much like Bodza in that way. If there are 3 or more direct balance relationships, then we're definitely invoking. If it's just 2, then it's sort of a hint of invocation. But if it's 3 or more, we have a strong, very strong relationship in that way. And then somebody else points out, I think it's probably Shant, right? Same to SI, small intestine. Yeah, for sure, okay. Master point, what to do with that? Yeah, so you can use that. And depending on the other herbs that you would use in the formula, you might wind up spinning it more toward the lung or more toward the small intestine, see? So this is why we wind up combining herbs in different ways and doing that kind of stacking that we started doing in our last class. We're going to get a lot more into that. Okay. All right. So let's take a little break here, and then we'll come back and we'll start doing our comparisons, even a little bit different comparisons. Okay. Outside of the category. Okay. So remember, so far we've been kind of comparing all of these with the Jixiang tongue, that original one. And so we get these meaningful comparisons going on. That's how we learn how to differentiate and what to prescribe in the moment. Okay. All right. So let's come back in 5-ish minutes. All right. See you soon.